Sir,
Yeah.
with regard for the finals, you know how we're allowed to take it on an alternate date?
Oh,
Uh,
not sure about that.
Well, because it says on, if you check for the exams, it says we're allowed to take it on a different date. If we choose to take it on the alternate, is it given at the same time as on the original or at a different time?
I have to check that. Sorry. So let me note. So if you want to take a final on some other date.
Yeah, because it's given on Saturday,
Yeah.
The 11th at from 2 to 4:30,
Yeah, exactly.
and the alternate's on the 12th. Is it given at the same time as in on the 12th at 2 to 4:30, or is it at a different time?
Oh, I would have to check that.
Okay.
So I'll come back to you.
All right, thanks.
Morning, Professor.
Morning.
Someone asked something in the chat.
Yeah. Let me check that. Is there a way for us to be able to review both the midterm and yes, exactly. Yes. So you just come to office hours, and we'll do that. Or if it's too crowded, then we can set some other time to do it. So it may take time, though, but yeah, that's the way things have to be done. Okay, so yeah, I can comment a bit about the final because it's sorry. All right, not the final, but the midterm. So yeah, now that I know how to release the grades, I did it as soon as I could. So the class average is all right. It's 66.1885%, more or less, which sits right in the middle of all the groups. So yeah, that's fine. And yeah, as I said, if you want to see your mistakes and everything, come to office hours. We'll discuss them. Yeah, and that's about it. Yeah. So
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I was,
Question.
yeah, yes, I was cutting out. Could you repeat what you just said? I'm sorry.
Oh, I just said that the class average is 66.2%, more or less, which is right in the middle of all the groups that are taking 2-1. So that's all right. And without further ado, well, are there any questions about the midterm?
Professor, is that
Yeah.
possible we can see the review?
Yes, you come to office hours and yeah, we'll review it. Yeah, the
cannot
final
see
is
it
also
by
not.
ourselves because it's not permit.
Say that again?
Can we see it by ourselves from the Moodle?
Can we what?
I mean maybe we can see it by ourselves from Noodle.
Review yourself.
She means that we can't because now it says review not permitted.
Yeah, the
Oh
review
yeah,
is
yeah.
not
No,
permitted.
okay, yourself. No. You.
Yeah.
The only thing is, you come to office hours and I review it with you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So it would be so much easier for everybody if I would just send answers to you right away, so you could do it on your own. So the problem with that is always the same. It's yeah, it's some students who just grab all the answers, then they post it on some websites, and then yeah, it kind of makes life harder for us. So because of that, then we have to do it this way. Yeah, go ahead.
I know you said that the second midterm was a bit harder than the first one, like, and that was intended. Do you know if the final's gonna be as hard as the midterm?
Yeah, likely be, yes. I think, yeah, in the 60s, 65% for more or less is what they target as class average. Yeah, at this level. So yeah.
All right.
Other questions?
I'm not able to see the grades.
Is
it on my lab?
On Moodle.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's go back to the class. We are almost done. We're right on schedule. So today we're going to start shortly the international trade. International trade is a fun part of the class, in my opinion. Well, this too was quite fun, actually. The cost of government intervention. All right. Okay, so just to see what we're talking about. So we were talking about all the ways that markets can fail. And finally, how governments can intervene. Why? Well, because even though we're doing economics, we are subsidiary to the political system, because most economic policy has to be implemented by governing bodies and laws and regulations. So we have to think about how we're going to, quote unquote, fix all the problems with the free markets. So we have to think about government interventions. So yeah, this was the, I think maybe the last slide last time. Just discussing that government intervention has direct costs and indirect costs. So direct costs is just what the measure is or how much it costs to implement it. And indirect cost is everything that has to do with the legislation that gets to the law, and yeah, all and these costs may look, sometimes they are very small, but sometimes they can be non-trivial. All right. So yeah, so so these costs, are costs on, so indirect costs are yeah, 3 examples of indirect costs: changes in production costs. So that's just yeah, that's just so the cost in the change in the cost linked to change in behavior. So and then what is compliant costs? Cost of compliance. So it's everything to do that has to do with red tape. Yeah, so bureaucracy. Yeah, so so oftentimes it's not good for business. So it doesn't mean that we should just not implement any law, but it means that we have to be aware that things have to move swiftly. So some economists had studied this, that they compared the cost of having a new business in Peru and the US. And they realized that in Peru, just going through all the permits and talking to all the officials, it took at least a year and paying bribes sometimes. So it took at least a year of work just to start a business. And in the US, people still complain that it takes time and effort to just start a business, but it's just so much easier. And so and in some countries, it's even easier than in the US. And this matters. If you think, oh, I have a good idea, let's start, but oh, I can't even start making money until a year in the future. How am I going to survive in the meantime? Then this matters a lot for business. Rent seeking is another problem. So it can be, so rent seeking, yeah, is what? So let's start with rent. Rent is a pure income that some agent, so some firm or government official, gets purely because of a specific position. So what can we observe for rent seeking? So for governments, so rent seeking in government, it's corruption. So I lived in Mexico for a year, and there it was very difficult to govern properly. So twice in recent history, they had to fire the whole justice branch of the government. So all the policemen and all the higher ranks until the I don't know if the Minister of Justice was fired, but they had to fire everybody. Why? Because how it works is, as long as you can buy your gun, then you can become a policeman. And then what you do with your rank is, so you make some arrests, but then you ask people, oh, could you, if you want me to not charge you with anything, so you can just pay me a bribe, and then you use the bribe that you get as a policeman to bribe your superior so that he doesn't fire you, for instance. And then that superior gets all the money from his bribes, and then he can bribe the higher up and higher up. So everybody bribes everybody else. So it's unmanageable as a system. It clogs up everything, and you just, so sometimes in Canada you can complain that some officials. So we had we had many scandals. So for instance, in the construction sector in Quebec, and especially in the city of Montreal. So that does exist, but believe me, it can be so much worse in many other places. And this is really, really bad for economic growth. There's also rent seeking in the private sector. So when a firm is going to, firm takes advantage of legislation to cement its position, its advantageous position. Against its competitors. So it's when firms stop to just try to make products as good as possible, and rather than that, they try to implement laws that are going to favor themselves and to make things difficult for their competitors. So that's essentially trying to, again, put barrier to entry, so become a monopolist in some ways. So both can do it, and that's bad too. Most important cause of government failure is the nature of the government's own objective. So sometimes some people who don't like government, they say, yeah, government doesn't serve anything. So government is imperfect because it's a human institution like all the other human institutions. So does it mean that we should just get rid of it? Well, most people say, yeah, so government is imperfect, but most people would say that the way to go is to fix it. Not get rid of it. If it's just it works really, really bad, then okay, maybe you try to. So in the US, there is always this tug of war between the right and the left. Say that the right says, oh, we want a small government because we believe that the government doesn't do anything right, and the left believes that the government is going to solve everything. So of course, probably the truth is somewhere in the middle, but so there's no modern countries that it can exist without a public sector that does a lot of things. So it's just a matter of trying to make it work as efficiently as possible. Yeah. So special ways in which the government does not work. So, for instance, elected officials that seek to maximize their votes. So this is studied specifically by a field that is so that's by political economy. So not how the economy should work and how the government should create intervention, but rather how officials in the government can maximize their vote by implementing popular economic policies, for instance. So this is the other way around. It's a very interesting topic too. Not very easy to study, but still exists. The civil servants seek to maximize their salaries and their influence. So that has to do with, of course, with corruption there, that as we're talking about. In economics, we also call this the principal agent problem. So, oops, what happened there? Oh yeah, okay. So the principle is wants something done. Done by the agent. The agent has his her own goals. So for instance, if I'm employed in a firm and I want to, my boss tells me, oh, you have to be the accountant, so please balance our books and do it professionally. But then instead of that, I take some money for myself, or then I pay a friend who's in the firm and some extra money. So essentially, I try to make it look like I'm doing what the principal is asking me to do, but I have my own agenda. So of course, civil servants can do the same. So they have their own agenda within the government. They want to pursue their career as good as possible. They want to maximize their salary as well as possible. And this might be at the detriment of the mission of the whole government, which is to serve people as well as possible. Yeah, and this is now voters seek to maximize their own utility as well. So this is rather a problem of democracies since we were talking about voters. So which may lead to what we may call the populism. Or the dictatorship of the majority. So, for instance, so what does that mean? It means that the highest number of voters just care about their own issue, and they elect people that will just serve them and that will neglect the needs of the population of the country as a whole. So yeah, let me. So for instance, if I were to ask you, what do you care most about? Conditions in CHSLDs, or the healthcare system, or climate change? What would you say?
for me would be for climate change and it's not in your option, but the budget, balanced budget. So yeah.
That's perfect answer. That's for the kind of thing so yeah. So young people care about the future, not too much debt. And the climate. So this is why you see so many young people that go to the manifestations in at the COP for the climate negotiations, because they care about it, because they're the one who are going to be there. But then if you ask baby boomers, they care about the healthcare system. They don't care all that much about the climate because they know they're not going to be around for a while, for a long time. And CHSLD, I don't know in English how you spell that. So, but yeah, old people homes, well, they have poor conditions because few political, how would I say that? Few electors care about this. So they're not very old people. They're not a big political bloc, and you're never going to win an election with them. So we don't care about it. And these in CHSLD, the conditions are horrible. Yeah, retirement home. All right. So government as monopolists. So so governments intervene in the economy as any other firm, but they are a very, very large buyer. So essentially, sometimes we see that they are monopsony because they are almost the only people who are going to buy. So for instance, who builds the roads? Well, some people build a small road somewhere in the woods, but mostly it's government who hire people to build the roads. Yeah, but they don't have shareholders because they can just tax everybody. So yeah, and they slowly react to change. So yeah, indication of this is budget in 1 year dictates the budget in the next, no matter the real needs. So that's why sometimes you have people saying, okay, now we still need to spend $10,000. So please buy some office chairs and buy yourself some staplers and something. Otherwise, we're going to lose this money next year. So what does that mean? It means that money is not spent as efficiently as it should. It's because it's just such a large organization that it's impossible to really know who needs what. So everybody tries to grab onto their budget and not lose it, essentially. So it's inefficient, but it's not a private corporation, it's the public. So it's funded by our taxes. So they don't really have to answer to shareholders. How much should the government intervene? So it's a matter of cost benefit. It should be like in the public system, in the private system. So you have to calculate cost and benefits of every measure. Before or should before implementing it. So for example, third link for Quebec. Is it better or worse? So then you have to ask yourself, how much is it going to cost? How much saving is it going to give you in terms of traveling time? What cost? What other costs is it going to lead in terms of CO2 emissions, for instance? So these are all things that you should be asking yourself before you intervene. All right, so that's the end of this chapter. Any questions before we move on to trade?
Yes. When will the PowerPoint be available to us? The annotated one.
For this one, yeah, just after this class.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay, gains from international trade. That's a fun application of what we already learned in this class. So yeah, the main goal of this chapter is to understand why countries trade. And this is some of the fundamental questions that early economists like Adam Smith and later David Ricardo ask themselves. So that's what we're going to study today. So factor endowment and climate can influence a country's comparative advantage. So comparative advantage is what drives countries to trade, essentially. Well, in some theories, there are some other explications, but comparative advantage is a good the good explanation. And then the determination of trade patterns. Okay, so as you can see, trade has been going up a lot. This is not as a fraction of world GDP. This is world trade and world GDP. But if you divide world trade by world GDP, you see that world trade is increasing more than world GDP. So that's what we call, one aspect of what we call globalization. So,
Sir, what is GDP?
oh, yes, sure. Good question, thanks. GDP is gross domestic product. So that's something that you would learn in macro. So that's everything that is produced and exchanged in a country. If it's nominal GDP, then it's measured in dollars. But if it's real, the GDP, then we divide by the price level. So we get a clear amount of how much good is being produced, regardless of prices. Yeah, so of course I say exchange because many things that people do are useful, but if they're free, so if you just decide to record some song at home with your camera and you put it on the internet and it becomes viral and everybody watches it, well, this clearly has values for maybe millions of people, but since they don't pay for it, then it's not seen in the GDP, regardless of the fact that you did it. Or if you take care of some elderly person or your kids, then it's not part of it. But a trick, if you have children and your friends have children too, and you want to increase the GDP, so what you do is you ask your friend, oh, let me take care of your kids, you take care of my kids, I pay you and you pay me, and then boom, you increase the GDP because now it's going to be counted within the GDP. Yeah, so all that for saying what I want to say is that GDP is not a perfect measure of economic activity, but it's a very good one. Yeah, so back to this. So trade increases faster than economic activity. What happened there? There's this dip there.
We're in 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was yeah, recession.
Yes, Great Recession. So what's funny about it is we barely see it in terms of world GDP, but it was very bad in terms of trade. But that's normal. Trade goes up and goes down quite faster than production itself. And yeah, so I don't think we can see COVID-19 there, but this was extremely bad for global trade as well. But now it's slowly coming back up. So if you have a problem with, if you order things on Amazon and it takes time, that's because of, yeah, the economy is not back to normal, but yeah, in a few years it's going to be. Yeah. So this is Canada's import and exports. So what do we see that's important? Well, first of all, this. So we export a lot of consumer goods and we don't export as much. So where does all these imports come from?
Maybe the US. I don't. Not sure. Which is the question? I think I missed like half of it.
So where does these consumer goods come from?
Oh, I think China.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, China. So no, but you're so yeah. In general,
I thought like for vehicle.
yeah, the US
Okay.
is the most important trading partner of Canada because of distance. but it's not in one specific sector. So we exchange in many, many different sectors. So consumer goods, yes. So this imports from China. And then energy products. So what's going on there? What is this blue line there?
Quebec.
Petrol, from Alberta, the petrol and
Yeah. So, but Hydro-Quebec, I hadn't thought about it, but it's true that we do export some electricity to Vermont and yeah, mostly to southern, yeah, to the northern states in the US. But yes, most of it is shale gas, shale oil. So that's the big imbalance is we import a lot more consumer goods and we export much more energy products. All right. So very quickly, what do we mean by open economy? It's an economy that engages in international trade. And a closed economy is an economy that has no foreign trade. So usually smaller countries are much more open because they cannot sustain, they cannot produce everything for themselves, but larger countries like the US actually are more self-reliant. So for instance, the US produces, well, pre-crisis, pre-COVID, they produced a lot of their own oil from shale oil, and they yeah, and they do produce a lot of consumer goods as well, but of course they do import a lot from China as well. But yeah, smaller countries, they have no choice because they have to specialize in something and trade a lot with their neighbors. In Europe, they do trade a lot. Yeah, so without trade, everyone must be self-sufficient. But we're going to see briefly why it's not easy being self-sufficient. And by the way, before larger countries or better because it was easier to train. So I'm saying, for instance, Canada or the US, it's a large country, then you have a large market. But nowadays, as seen in the previous slide, yeah, so much trade is happening that small countries can be very very successful as well. Yeah, so you don't have to have a large market. But before there was a lot of barrier to trade. It was complicated because you had to think about having to buy foreign money, and everything was complicated. But nowadays it's so easy that you could be a very small country and still do very well for yourself. Yeah, so with trade, people can specialize in what they do well and satisfy other needs by trading. Gain from trade is the increased output attributable, sorry, to the specialization that is made possible by trade. So that this is gain from trade is why we believe that people trade. Okay, so just wait a second. All right. So here it is. What we're going to see here is the theory of absolute and comparative advantage. Well, here they talk about absolute advantage, but I'm going to introduce comparative advantage. So this whole set of ideas of thinking about why would one country trade with another if they are better or worse at producing something was developed by David Cato and influenced by the great Adam Smith. Yeah, so here's what's going on. So here's when your brain is going to have to start working a bit. So here you have Canada and the EU, and of course, Canadian were better at producing everything than the EU. But imagine that. So why would we see? So we are better because in Canada to produce 1 kilogram of wheat, it costs $1, and 1 meter of cloth, it costs $5. Whereas in the EU, it costs $6 and $3 per kilogram for wheat. So you see that it costs more to produce wheat, it costs more to produce cloth. So imagine, first of all, that imagine that the cost of cloth in Canada was $10 per meter, rather. So if Canada and the EU wanted to trade, what would they choose to do, for instance? Imagine this is 10 here.
The EU would import wheat and export cloth.
Yes, exactly. So here we would say that Canada has an absolute advantage in wheat because it costs so little to produce here, but we're so bad at producing cloth, it's just not worth it. But the thing is, we still need it. So if we are on our own and we cannot trade, we're just going to pay so much money to produce it. But then if the EU is willing to trade with us, then what should we do? Well, we have large fields in Saskatchewan and Alberta, where or even Ontario, where we produce a lot of wheat. So let's just concentrate in doing this and then export our wheat to the EU and have the EU export its cloth to Canada. So everybody's better off. That's trade. And this is what we would call absolute advantage, because the EU has an absolute advantage in cloth and Canada has an absolute advantage in wheat. But here's how things get more fun, interesting. So imagine it's $5 here. So then question is, who has the absolute advantage in wheat? Well, it's obviously Canada because it costs less to produce wheat. Who has the absolute advantage in cloth? Well, it's Canada again, because it only costs $5 per meter in Canada, whereas it costs $6 in the EU. So does that mean that, okay, there's nothing to do, we cannot trade? What do you think?
Well, Canada can still export things. It doesn't have to be like 1 for 1. No?
Yeah, but are we going to benefit by trading with the EU? The EU, they suck. They're not good. You see, they costs
Yeah,
a
but they
lot
would
to
pay
produce.
us. Be like money, no?
Yeah,
You ask them
but
to price match.
the what?
You ask them to price match.
Yeah, so who would so imagine that we let Canada and EU trade. Who should be exporting what to whom? Should Canada produce more wheat or more cloth?
I'm not sure, but I think it would be like cloth, and for you, yeah, the other like wheat, but I'm not sure.
So you think so? Who would be producing cloth?
Yeah, maybe Canada, even if it's like it's cheaper wheat. I'm not sure. I'm just trying something.
Yeah, no, it's
And
all
the
right.
EU would be like $3 the wheat for the EU. So, yeah.
So somebody has another idea.
I think Canada would produce wheat and the EU the other one because the difference is greater with wheat than it is with cloth.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. Perfect. So what you have to consider is so another example would be, imagine let's just say Celine Dion. Celine Dion is the greatest singer, maybe not the greatest, but a very, very good singer. And she has somebody to cook for her. So if the cook is super good at cooking and Celine Dion is super good at singing, then Celine Dion should sing for both of them and the cook should cook food for both of them. But imagine that Celine Dion is actually a very good cook too, and even better than the other cook. So does it mean that Celine Dion should stop singing half of the day and spend her time cooking? No, it still is advantages for Celine Dion to just sing and produce so much more by her song then she can trade with her cook, and the cook would just, and it doesn't make sense for the cook to start singing a bit because Celine Dion is not there anymore. So it still is better for Celine Dion to do the singing and the cook to do the cooking, even if Celine Dion is for some reason a very good cook herself. So that's the same thing for Canada and the EU. It turns out that even though Canada is better at producing cloth than wheat, then it still is better for Canada to produce wheat because it's just so cheap to produce wheat in Canada that you're going to have so much excess wheat production that you can sell to the EU. And the EU is just going to say, well, if I'm trading with Canada, I know I'm not that good at producing wheat or cloth, but since wheat is so cheap in Canada to produce, let them produce wheat. I'm going to stop producing wheat myself and produce cloth for the both of us. It's going to be expensive, but still by producing this and selling to Canada is ready to buy it. Since they're going to take all their effort to producing wheat, then they're going to want to buy our cloth, and both of us were going to make a profit. And one way to see this is in terms of opportunity costs. So in Canada, so let's just look at opportunity cost of producing of let's just say of 1 kilogram of wheat. Oops. So in Canada, if you decide to produce 1 kilogram of wheat, then you have to spend $1. And thus it means that you have $1 less to spend on cloth. But so it doesn't cost $1 to produce 1 meter of cloth, it costs 5. So you're going to have to reduce not the 1 meter of cloth, but 0.2 meters. So the opportunity cost of 1 kilogram of wheat in Canada would be $1. Oops. Divided by $5 equals 0.2 meter of cloth. And in the EU, it would be, so you have to spend $3 more to produce 1 kilogram of wheat, but then that's $3 that you cannot use to produce cloth. So it means that you are going to have maybe half a meter less of cloth. So again, here the opportunity cost is $3 divided by $6 equals 0.5 meter. So it means that the opportunity cost in Canada of obtaining more wheat is much lower than in the EU. So Canada should be producing more wheat. So what could we do? So we could say, for instance, let's say Canada produces let's say 5 kilos of wheat. So so it reduces production of cloth by 1 meter, because it costs $5 more. So then you have $5 less. So you have to sacrifice 1 meter of cloth. But the EU produces 1 meter more of cloth. So it's going to cost them $6. So $6, it means that they're going to be able to produce how much less kilogram of wheat? Yes, 2 kilograms of meat. Yes. So they sacrifice. Wheat. By 2 kilos. So the result, we have as much cloth as before, but we have 5 kilo minus 2 kilo equals 3 kilos more of wheat. So if they start working together, then they can, by specializing, Canada specializing in its agriculture and the EU in its textile production, they can both produce more, because EU concentrates on one, Canada concentrates on the other. All right, so that's the crux of it.
Just
yeah, go ahead.
question.
Now question time.
Those costs, they don't include like the cost of shipping, like the planes, the boats and stuff. Like, how does that affect?
Of course, that's a great point. So that here we don't assume any transportation cost. What we say is, so we just look at, imagine that we can fuse the two countries. Would it be worth it? Yes. But in reality, if there's a very large, or imagine the infinite cost of trade, then we're not going to trade at all, because any gain from specialization, we would lose by just having to pay the boats to send it. So this is why this is a big reason why the main trading partner of Canada is not the EU, it's the US, because they're just down the border. So it doesn't cost a lot to have many trucks that travel back and forth in North America. Yeah, so that's such a great point that I'm going to add it there. Note. Does not include trade costs. So essentially what you could say is that this great leap in yeah, that's something I should add to reflects great increase or great decrease in cost of trade. So somebody knows what was the huge innovation of the second half of the 20th century that greatly increased trade?
Jet engines.
Say that again.
Jet engines. You can get stuff across the ocean faster.
Jet engine. Yeah, but some trade occur by plane, but yeah, most trade is still by boat. Yeah, so great innovation.
The internet?
Yeah. Yeah, internet is super useful for service industry. But it doesn't show up all that much in the trade data. So the really great innovation is something very, it looks so simple when you think about it. It's containers.
Containers. Yeah.
So before containers, we needed so long to take off the stuff that was in the ship, put it on the side, and then charge the ship back with some other thing. It took so long. Now with containers, you don't even have to know what's inside it. You just take the box, put it on the train and or in the truck, and off it goes, and it's just so fast. But as we have seen this year, if yeah, trade can still be delayed if things don't work extremely efficiently. But yeah, containers was the big breakthrough that allowed for this crazy increase in trade. All right. So this is just saying again what I was saying. So the opportunity cost of 1 kilogram of wheat in Canada is 0.2 meter of cloth, whereas in the EU it's 0.5 meter of cloth. So in Canada, so the reverse is the opportunity cost of 1 meter of cloth is 5 kilo of wheat. So that's just 1 over 0.2, you get 5. And the opportunity cost of 1 meter of cloth is 2 kilo of wheat. So that's 1 over 0.5, you get 2. And then, so that's the big insight of David Ricardo is comparative advantage reflect opportunity costs that differ between country. And so that's why they should trade, essentially. So is there a situation in which Canada and the EU should not trade? Somebody knows? Or should they always trade?
I mean, I guess if both countries can have the same opportunity costs, right? There won't be much of a difference in
Exactly.
buying imported or local.
Yeah, exactly. If they both have the exact same opportunity cost. Because in that case, every time you what's that saying there? Every time, so if you have a 0.2 and 0.2 here, then it means that if I increase my production of wheat in Canada by 0.2, by 1 kilo, I reduce my production of cloth by 0.2. But if that's exactly the same in the EU, then it's not like we're going to lose money, but however we try and specialize, it's not going to produce any excess production, because the sacrifice that we both do to specialize in one or the other would be exactly the same. Yeah, so this is what I was explaining there. So in their example, they say 1 additional kilo of wheat, then that would have been used to produce 0.2 kilo of cloth. So that's the same example. So this is what we say. So one country has comparative advantage in the production of good X if the cost of producing X in terms of foregone output of other goods is lower in that country than in another country. And yeah, here their example is they say, let's increase wheat production by 5 kilo in Canada and reduce by 1. Okay, and here they say, let's reduce by 4 wheat production in the EU and increase by 2 cloth production. So the total excess, the total gain from this specialization here is +5 minus 4 equals +1. So wheat, 1 more kilo of wheat, and -2 minus 1 plus 2 equals +1. So here there's 1 more meter of cloth and 1 more kilo of wheat produced. And then these two would trade. Now we're not saying anything about the relative price just yet. So how much is Canada going to pay for Europe's cloth, and how is Europe going to pay for Canada's wheat? We're not saying that right away, but we know one thing: it has to be in the middle. So if the opportunity cost of wheat is 0.2 in Canada, 0.5 in the EU, then the relative price should be between 0.2 and 0.5, so 0.3, for instance, or 0.4, something like that, something that would make it profitable for both parties to exchange on the international market. Otherwise, then it doesn't. It's if some country tries to rip off the other country, then okay, the other country is just going to say, well, we could have a win-win situation there, but if you're just not going to make me an offer that's reasonable, then we just do not trade. Yeah, so this is what we mean here. So each trading gain from trade. So world output increases if countries specialize in the production of goods, which they have a comparative advantage. Canada specializes in wheat, the EU specializes in cloth, and consumption possibilities are increased in both countries. Okay, so here is the relative price. So what's going on there? So this is the production possibility. So here we're back with, so we are not seeing costs here. We are seeing what the production possibility would be in both countries. So as you can see, Canada is good at producing wheat. Yeah, so Canada. Wheat is cheap. So we can produce lots of it. And in Europe, so cloth is relatively cheaper. So we can produce lots of it. So that's why you see that you have a possibility of producing lots of wheat, and in Europe, possibility of producing lots of cloth. And so what would happen if they didn't trade? Well, Canada would choose some point there. That's that gives them some wheat and some cloth to consume, and this point is based on their preference. So the preference of Canadians for food versus clothing, I guess. And the same thing would happen in Europe. But so they would maybe decide to consume somewhere here, for instance. But then what do you see? You see that the relative, the opportunity cost of wheat is, or rather of cloth, is high compared to wheat in Canada, and is small compared to wheat in Europe. So it's reflected by the fact that the slope is steep in Canada and the slope is flatter in Europe. So what can we do? Well, we can have some international price that is between the relative price of Canada and the relative price of Europe. So it's not say 0.2 and it's not 0.5, so maybe it's 0.3 or 0.4, and it makes it profitable for Canada to say, oh well, let's just produce S. So this is Canada's production. If Canada just produces, if Canada concentrate or specializes in wheat, so it's going to produce at S, and here if Europe specializes in a cloth, and then what do? Well, they trade. So Canada exports some of its extra wheat at this relative international price. So it's able to what? To access some basket of goods or some bundles that were inaccessible before, which is D there. So D. So Canada by exporting Canada is able exporting to access the bundle D, which been unattained otherwise. The relative price, international price, must be in between the relative price in Canada and in the, let's put that there. Yeah, so Canada is made richer by trade, and the same thing happens to the EU. So this is all the production possibility that was available before. But now if the EU says, oh, let's just go for specialization and produce S, then we can export it and export part of our super high production of cloth and access this bundle D that was inaccessible before. All right, so that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, so what dictates the price? What dictates how much trade is going to happen? So it's not said. This is a very simple model, but of course it depends on the relative size of the EU and Canada. So for instance, probably in real life, the EU would just produce a bit more cloth and then export it to Canada. So the gain would be very small because Canada is much, much smaller than the EU. So in real life, maybe you would have S that would be here, and then the gain of trade would have D that would be just there, for instance. So here it's an abstraction that makes it look like the EU and Canada have relatively the same size, but yeah. And also it's dictated by the tastes of Canadians and Europeans. Yeah. So yeah, that's about it. So yeah, just conclusion briefly. So opportunity cost of producing X is the output of the other product that must be sacrificed to increase the output of X in one unit. But so since they are different, then country A has comparative advantage of country B, and its opportunity cost is lower. So when the opportunity costs are all the same in all countries, then there is no comparative advantage and we cannot trade. But as soon as there is a slight difference in opportunity cost, then it's advantageous to trade. All right, so let's finish here. So yeah, questions, comments, if you want to discuss.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between comparative advantage and absolute advantage? Is it the same thing?
No. So let me go back. So absolute advantage is this situation there is the fact that Canada has lower production cost in wheat because it just costs $1, and a lower production cost in cloth, it just costs $5. So Canada is better at producing both things. So Canada has an absolute advantage in wheat, absolute advantage in cloth. But for trade, it doesn't matter if you're so the real thing that matters is not absolute advantage, but comparative advantage. And you see that in Canada, the opportunity cost of 1 kilo of wheat is 0.2 meter of cloth. In Europe, the opportunity cost of 1 kilo of wheat is 0.5 meter of cloth. So as soon as these two are not the same, then there's a potential gain from trade. Then Canada should specialize in wheat because it's so much cheaper to produce it in Canada compared to cloth. And Europe should take the slack and produce cloth and exchange it back for Canadian wheat. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thanks everyone, and have a nice weekend, and I see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you, sir. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
A good weekend.
Thank you.